On September 26, 2025, the Supreme Court struck down the Trump-era tariff regime, reshaping the balance of power in American trade policy. The 6-3 decision reasserted Congress's authority over international commerce, ending years of executive-driven trade wars and protectionist measures. This ruling not only dismantled tariffs on hundreds of billions in goods but forced a national reckoning. What kind of economic power should the U.S. be in the 21st century? As businesses, consumers, and politicians scramble to adapt, the future of American trade is now back in Congress's hands. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, we must revisit the Trump administration's use of tariffs as an economic weapon. Tariffs, once rare, became central to U.S. policy, justified by broad interpretations of national security laws like Section 232. Supporters claimed tariffs revived industries and protected jobs. Critics argued they raised costs, hurt exporters, and destabilized global trade. The impact was immediate. Manufacturers faced higher input costs. Farmers suffered from retaliatory tariffs, and consumers paid more. For some, tariffs were a lifeline. For others, a stifling burden. The divisive experiment set the stage for a constitutional showdown. The Supreme Court's majority opinion, led by Chief Justice Roberts, declared the executive had overstepped its authority. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate foreign commerce. The court found that using national security as a catch-all justification for tariffs undermined this balance. The decision restored a crucial guardrail, reminding all branches that trade policy must be rooted in law, not executive fiat. The ruling is now a landmark, reaffirming that efficiency cannot override constitutional process. The era of unilateral, president-led trade wars is over, at least for now. The court's decision triggered an immediate halt to tariff collection at U.S. borders. Importers rushed to claim refunds, while businesses saw instant relief from years of inflated costs. Stock markets soared as investors anticipated lower inflation and renewed global trade flows. Yet, not everyone benefited. U.S. steel and aluminum producers, once shielded by tariffs, now face fierce global competition. Workers in these industries fear job losses, while retailers and manufacturers celebrate lower prices. The ruling exposed the deep trade-offs in any national economic strategy. America's economic landscape shifted overnight. The Supreme Court's ruling sent shockwaves through Washington, igniting a fierce and immediate debate among lawmakers, administration officials, and political commentators. The decision, which many had anticipated but few fully expected, quickly became the focal point of conversations in the halls of Congress and across the nation's capital. As news spread, both supporters and critics scrambled to respond, each side eager to shape the narrative and influence the next steps. President Biden addressed the nation from the White House, calling the decision a vital restoration of constitutional order. He emphasized that the ruling reaffirmed the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches, and pledged to work closely with Congress to develop new trade laws that would protect American interests while respecting democratic principles. Biden urged lawmakers to seize this opportunity to modernize trade policy for a rapidly changing global economy. In sharp contrast, former President Trump condemned the ruling in a series of fiery statements and social media posts. He warned that the decision would undermine American workers and industries, arguing that it stripped the executive branch of crucial tools needed to respond quickly to unfair foreign competition. Trump vowed that, if re-elected, he would fight relentlessly for stronger protections and push Congress to enact tough new measures. On Capitol Hill, the response was deeply divided. Some lawmakers, particularly those who had long advocated for a greater legislative role in trade policy, welcomed the return of authority to Congress. They saw it as a chance to ensure more transparency and accountability in decisions that affect millions of American jobs. However, others, especially representatives from industrial states, expressed concern that the ruling could jeopardize local industries and leave workers vulnerable to global market shifts. Importantly, the decision did not ban tariffs outright. Instead, it placed the responsibility for future trade barriers squarely in the hands of Congress, setting the stage for intense legislative negotiations. Lawmakers now face the daunting task of balancing economic growth, national security, and the interests of diverse constituencies as they consider new trade frameworks. Committees are already convening, with staffers and policy experts drafting proposals and debating the best path forward. The challenge is to craft a modern, balanced trade policy that can withstand global pressures while supporting American workers and businesses at home. As protests erupt outside the Capitol and advocacy groups mobilize, it's clear that the political battle over America's economic destiny is only beginning. The coming months will test the resolve of lawmakers and the nation's ability to adapt to a new era in trade policy. U.S. trading partners greeted the Supreme Court's decision with relief and hope for stability. Allies like the EU, Japan, and Canada saw it as a chance to rebuild trust and modernize trade relationships. The end of unpredictable, unilateral tariffs was welcomed as a return to rules-based cooperation. China, the main target of the tariffs, cautiously welcomed the ruling and signaled openness to renewed dialogue. The decision removed a major source of global tension, offering a fresh start for international economic diplomacy. The world now watches to see if the U.S. will lead with partnership, not protectionism. With the court's ruling, the United States now stands at a pivotal crossroads, facing a moment that could redefine its economic trajectory for generations to come. The decision has set in motion a wave of uncertainty and opportunity, forcing leaders and citizens alike to consider what kind of future they want to build. Will the nation embrace a new era of global cooperation, or turn inward to protect its industries and workers? Congress is now tasked with a historic responsibility to reform outdated trade laws that have governed the nation for decades. Lawmakers must grapple with the complex question of how much authority the president should wield in setting tariffs and shaping trade policy. This is not just a legal debate, but a fundamental question about the balance of power in American government and the future of the U.S. economy. At the heart of the debate lies the challenge of defining national security in the context of trade. Should economic threats be treated the same as military ones? How much flexibility should the executive branch have to respond to global crises? And how much oversight should Congress maintain to ensure accountability? These questions will spark intense discussions in the months ahead as lawmakers seek to strike a delicate balance between executive agility and legislative control. For the Biden administration, the landscape has fundamentally changed. Without the unilateral tools once available, the White House must now rely more heavily on building alliances with other nations, pursuing cases through the World Trade Organization, and crafting targeted measures that require broader support. Diplomacy and coalition building will become central to advancing U.S. interests on the world stage. America now stands between two competing visions for its economic future. One path leads toward renewed free trade, opening markets and fostering international cooperation. The other points toward a more strategic, congressionally approved protectionism, designed to shield key industries and safeguard national interests. The choices made in the coming months will have profound consequences for American workers, businesses, and consumers. The outcome of this debate will not only determine the direction of U.S. trade policy, but also shape the rules of global commerce for decades to come. Allies and rivals alike are watching closely, knowing that America's decisions will ripple across the world economy, influencing everything from supply chains to international investment. The arena of action has shifted decisively from the White House to Capitol Hill. Here, in the halls of Congress, the next chapter of America's economic story will be written, one that will define the nation's place in the world for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision marks a pivotal turning point, closing the era of executive-driven trade wars that have shaped recent years. For decades, presidents wielded sweeping authority over tariffs and trade policy, often acting unilaterally in the name of national security or economic advantage. Now, with this landmark ruling, the court has drawn a clear line, signaling that such sweeping powers must be checked and balanced by the legislative branch. This decision opens a new chapter for American economic policy, one that promises greater transparency, accountability, and public debate. The dawn of this new era brings both uncertainty and hope, as the nation looks to its elected representatives to chart a course forward. The challenge now is forging bipartisan consensus in a deeply polarized Congress, where competing interests and ideologies often clash. Lawmakers must rise above partisanship to address the complex realities of global trade, balancing the needs of American workers, businesses, and consumers. Crafting a durable, effective trade strategy will require negotiation, compromise, and a willingness to listen to diverse perspectives. Only through open dialogue can Congress develop policies that stand the test of time and serve the nation's long-term interests. The risk is clear. Gridlock and uncertainty could stall progress, leaving America vulnerable to economic shocks and global instability. Without decisive action, the country could face prolonged debates and missed opportunities. Yet, there is also a profound opportunity: a public, transparent debate about America's role in the global economy. Citizens, business leaders, and policymakers alike can now engage in shaping the nation's future, ensuring that trade policy reflects the values and priorities of the American people. A congressionally backed policy could bring much-needed legitimacy and predictability to U.S. trade, reassuring allies and competitors alike that America's approach is stable, principled, and rooted in democratic process. The path forward demands compromise, vision, and a renewed sense of responsibility from those in power. It calls for leaders who are willing to put the nation's interests above partisan gain and work tirelessly for the common good. Above all, it requires a steadfast commitment to the rule of law and the constitutional principles that define American democracy. The Supreme Court has clarified who decides trade policy, but not what that policy should be. That responsibility now rests squarely with Congress, and ultimately with the American people. The next chapter is unwritten, filled with both challenges and possibilities. It is up to lawmakers and citizens alike to seize this moment and shape the future of American trade. The next chapter belongs to Congress and the American people. Together, they will determine the path forward.